Welcome to Reels on the Rocks, the show where your hosts Whiskey and Sweet Tea discuss film from the unpretentious perspective. Heartbreak feels good in anime, especially in the case of Naoko Yamada's silent voice. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and as always, please be advised that spoilers are Hello, listeners. Welcome back for our second anime feature of the year. Although we are going to be a little bit quieter this time. Konnichiwa. But we're going to be quiet about it because that's as close as we can get to being silent without disrupting the podcast process.
I will be commenting. I will be doing all of my commentary in sign language in honor of the review.
Yes, so for those of you who are hearing impaired, I hope you'll be able to sense his signs. And I also hope this is not insensitive, but welcome back, everybody.
They won't be able to hear us.
So
back.
we have our second title. Second title, but we also have Whiskey here with, per usual, a topic of the day. So what is your mini topic that you brought for us today?
Well, it wouldn't be anime without talking about American anime, and we've got one of the most celebrated American animes returning to Hulu this year, and it is actually kind of relevant to what we're talking about. So King of the Hill is doing a revival where they're catching up with the Hill family, 20 years later or whatever. I'm not sure what the time frame is, but a lot has happened. As of recording, they have released a trailer, and you actually get to see what the new opening credits looks like. But the reason I think it's kind of worth talking about King of the Hill this episode, I believe I mentioned this last year during our one anime episode where we talked about Shogun. But for some reason, there's a couple of theories as to why, but King of the Hill is really big in Japan. So you could technically call it an American anime. Oh yeah. So as I said, I mentioned this. So what people think is that it is similar to slice of life anime, where it's there's nothing crazy going on. It's just anime is about daily life. I think one that I can think of that I watched as a kid because my sister was watching it was Azumanga Daioh, which is, there's half of it is about these two teachers, and then the other half is about these group of girls who are friends. But it's just, it's, you could kind of maybe argue it's a comedy, but nothing crazy happens. It's just about their lives going to school or teaching class or whatever. And that's a whole genre in anime where it's just about kind of mundane daily life. And it scratches that itch in Japan, because that's basically kind of, again, the show is a comedy, you could argue that, but nothing that out of the ordinary happens in King of the Hill most of the time. You do every so often, you have Peggy going skydiving and then the parachute not opening up and that being a whole thing, and other stuff happening. But for the most part, it's kind of a window into American culture, the same way a lot of Americans are really fascinated with Japanese culture. Right. And a lot of them probably watch slice of life animes the same way that Japanese people watch American King of the Hill. Maybe American Dad's another kind of anime, but
American Dad's more of a parody. But no, I do agree. There is sort of just a fascination of Japanese culture on our end. And, for us, with this just being the everyday mundane life, it's bizarre to think that anybody would find this culture interesting enough to want to, see or emulate. I know, for example, I think it was KFC. They successfully were able to convince, I think Japan. Yeah, it was in Japan, that Americans eat KFC at Christmas or something. And so it's now a thing in Japan. People start ordering their KFC Christmas dinners out in August or something.
Oh yeah,
because
no, I don't know if that's the reason why, but that is definitely, maybe it is, because that is a thing. Like Christmas, like KFC Christmas meals are like a whole thing over there, and they're nice too. Like it's everything. It's like, I'm sure you've heard of this. McDonald's has like different menu items depending on what country it's in, and
oh
there's
yeah,
like some that actually sound really nice. And so you think of McDonald's here, you think of like the one in like downtown in the city where it's like sketchy and scary, and you don't even want to walk into the restaurant. And then you go
right.
like overseas, you go to like Spain, and it's like really clean, and
It's like
you get
super
like
classy.
so crazy. Yeah, well, and so the other thing with King of the Hill that is very similar to to how anime is over here, there's a whole argument over whether you should watch King of the Hill dubbed or subbed in Japan.
Oh my god.
And it's funny because it's like the sort of thing we talk about over here, about like, oh, like it's just not the same. You don't get the cultural context and blah blah blah. And the one of the big reasons there's even this debate with King of the Hill is with characters like Boomhauer, where, you know, if you're American, you know, like parts of the South, you get like that mushmouth accent where it's just, yeah, you know, like you don't know what they're saying because they've just got such a extremely Southern accent. I don't even know if it's like a Southern thing. Maybe it's like they got too much dip in their lip or something, but it's almost like mumbling everything.
Yeah.
And that's like what Boomhauer is kind of making fun of in the show. But in Japanese, basically Japanese people argue that you don't get the same effect when it's like a Japanese person acting it out because it's too legible. Like it's too, like they understand what he's saying, and then they hear it in, and I'm guessing a lot of this is like people who are bilingual, because that's also like a lot of the people who argue dubs versus subs with anime. It's like American weebs who've like gone out of their way to learn Japanese and actually, you know, I'll give them credit. They probably took a real class and they can actually like speak it fairly fluently, but they'll say the same thing where it's like, oh, the joke doesn't translate super well. And that's what the argument's been with Boomhauer, is it's like they're kind of doing it in Japanese, but like you can still understand what the voice actor is saying because they're not doing it. Just, it's one of those things that doesn't translate. There's no kind of accent in Japanese where you're just mumbling a bunch of nonsense.
I mean, to be fair, I would like just have them like say whatever they were gonna say, but like with their mouth full or something. Like, I mean, I get what they're saying, I guess, but for me, just on the dub versus sub topic, is I feel like I miss too much without it being dubbed. I mean, I don't mind reading subtitles; it doesn't scare me away from watching a movie, but I feel like I just miss too much. But so no, go on. So this is a big hit in Japan, though, is what you're saying.
It is. But like that's pretty much mainly I'm kind of wanting to talk about this dubs versus subs because it's very fascinating to see it from the other side of the argument, because it is like I appreciate that Japanese people who like this show actually kind of care enough to like really want to understand the jokes better, I guess, or at least the culture better. And so like I've got one source, because I remembered hearing about this last year, and again, I'm pretty sure I like briefly mentioned this on our Shogun review, but I hadn't done any research. I'd just been like hearing through the grapevine, oh, King of the Hill is really big in Japan, and because of Boomhauer, there's like a dubs versus subs thing going on. So I did a bit of research just to see like if there was anything written about this, and for the most part, it was just like Reddit discussions, but I did find an article from cracked.com, so you know, it's not the Hollywood Reporter or anything. And for the most part, it was just repeating, right? So Keegan Kelly is the author, but pretty much the article is just kind of going through everything I just said already. But let's see. Well, so the thing that article kind of gets into, so I asked T to listen to some clips of the show in Japanese, because a lot of that article is just sort of Keegan Kelly's commentary on what they think the voices sound like and what people complaining online have said. And thankfully in that Cracked article, there is like links to clips. So I like listened to the ones that he was referencing in the article. And a lot, there's things like where it's like, oh, Hank Hill's voice is too high pitched. There's the Boomhauer thing I was talking about. There was like Bobby doesn't have that kind of raspy voice that he does. Mm-hmm. So you listened to some clips. What were your sort of takeaways from how they sounded in Japanese? Because I kind of see where the Cracked article is going. But I thought it's just interesting because you are kind of like, well, how do they translate how these voices are going to sound in a different language?
So I totally agree with the concept of what they're getting at, whereas there is sort of like context clues and cultural associations you pick up that come not just from what they're saying, but their intonation, maybe how they pronounce certain words, or whether or not with Boomhauer, like you said, we can understand what they're saying. And just some characterization that you miss out on too, like you said with Bobby's raspy voice. So when I watched the clips in Japanese, in the sense, this is gonna sound weird, they sounded too intelligent. They did sound much more like, and again, I don't know if there was any context they tried to bring in through Japanese pronunciation or voice things. They did to me sound very city, and that's not really what they sound like on the show. I did find certain things hilarious, like one of Hank's exclamations when it translated over was hilarious, just because I just loved hearing it in a completely different intonation. Let me see, I think it's when he goes "bois" or something like that. It's wild. It just sounds so different, but it is, like you said, it is kind of odd and jarring because we both know what it sounds like to us. And when you hear them talk and you're just like, that's not them. And it's not even because it's a different language. They sounded too polished, too put together. But then again, like I've said before, is I do like listening to dubs because I feel like I can integrate more with the characters. So I wonder if this is a case of, since we have prior experience with them and we know what they're supposed to sound like, it sounds like we're missing out on something. Do you know what I mean? Like we can tell what we're missing out on. Whereas if it's a new title that we've never seen before and we watched in dub, it's just like, okay, this is just how they sound,
Yeah. Well, and one of the other neat things, for anyone, this happens to be their first episode of the show. T is actually a Texan, so you have like extra expertise as far as how people talk down there and everything. But it's weird, right? Like one thing that is kind of interesting, like trying to gauge how they sound, is like I don't speak Japanese, so I'm reading the subtitles and listening to how they sound. But I don't know like what words are what words and all that sort of stuff. Hank Hill, one of the criticisms is that his voice, it doesn't have that kind of low, something wrong with that boy, kind of authoritarian tone.
He doesn't have that North Texas drawl.
What I noticed from how he sounds in Japanese, I do agree his voice could be deeper, and I know that's like not a Japanese thing. I've definitely heard some like characters in anime speaking Japanese with like very deep, noble, like a deeper voice actor would have been appreciated. The one thing I do kind of gauge from listening to him talk, he does sound very stern, and I think that kind of at least translates well, because that was like Hank's whole thing, is he's very he toes the line, like he doesn't break the law. He's very
by the book.
Exactly. Like I was gonna say conservative, but like textbook conservative, not like a whack job. Yes. Like he's exactly like the model like conservative Christian father kind of guy. So like having a very stern sounding Japanese man worked really well. Also, the clip that was chosen for the Cracked article was like the episode where I guess he caught Bobby smoking. I vaguely remember this episode. So it's like that whole thing where, you catch your kid smoking, you have him smoke the whole carton of cigarettes or whatever. So he's like doing that with Bobby. But then he's criticizing how he's smoking the cigarettes. He's like showing him how to do it correctly.
No, that's not how you do it, right? You either come out with somebody who hates cigarettes or a future addict.
It's so man. I just that whole mentality is really funny. But I like that episode came back to me watching that because I like vaguely remembered that and just the absurdity of like actually teaching him how to smoke cigarettes correctly. And you can tell like when he's showing him, he's like enjoying it a little bit, and it's like, oh no, I can't get into this. So I don't know. There was something kind of funny about that. It was fun watching it in Japanese because there's also that whole thing of like Hank teaching him how to do it and stuff. The Boomhauer clip was interesting because it's hard for me as a native English speaker who does not know any Japanese besides, the basic arigato, konnichiwa. I've had some people say I can actually pronounce Osaka pretty well, but like I don't speak Japanese. So with the Boomhauer stuff, what's weird is like, so you're reading the subtitles and the subtitles don't have any breaks or any weird, like there's no mush mouth in it. So when you're hearing him speak Japanese, I can't tell if there's any jumbling going on. And when I'm reading the subtitles, there is no jumbling. Like they're just saying what he's supposed to be saying. So like at least as an English speaker listening to Japanese and reading the subtitles, the joke is ruined. So I can't speak on the Japanese because I don't know if he's mumbling or doing anything that way. It just sounds like Japanese to me. But at least in the dub, it is ruined. Or not in the dub, in the sub, it's ruined just because the subtitles are not making any kind of effort to explain what's going. I don't know. Like
so. Couple of things I just want to say about that is, well, like the subtitles, even if like it was subtitles in English for like the hearing impaired, it would have the same sort of issue. But I also wonder just with the way, and this might just be an issue, which is how our different languages are structured. Japanese is from what I understand, a very, very complex language. And I kind of wonder with some sort of the accents and stuff that, people would prefer that were portrayed over there. I wonder if that is maybe not compatible with the pronunciation of Japanese words, because I do know that like a lot of it hinges on literally like how to like just intonation alone can like change a word like 19 different times or something like that. So I kind of wonder if that limits the amount of accent they can throw on some of these things.
It's possible. Again, I appreciate the Japanese people who are bilingual criticizing this stuff because it's hard to do if you don't speak the other language. Like, I'm sure there's lots of Japanese people who can't really tell what they're supposed to be getting from the English version if they don't speak English. And I would hope at least like in Japanese subtitles, that Boomhauer thing is like being typed out in a way that they can get like, oh, he's hard to understand or something like that. But this is like a problem that's been going on with like anime. I actually wrote down a couple of examples as someone with like experiencing dubs and subs from anime that I watched growing up or, recently, and like how they changed some things or things that they did to like adapt the joke. Or just things that were jarring to me. Like, so the first example I have, I don't know if you've seen Dragon Ball T, but, I grew up with, like, the Cartoon Network, or it was on some other TV shows or TV channels when I was even younger, but, like, I remember the Cartoon Network run. It was usually I believe it was the Cell sagas where I kind of hopped in, but I grew up with dubbed Goku. So he was speaking English. He had, his voice and whatever. And in college, I was watching, I think it was Dragon Ball GT. It was one of like the newer series.
Right.
With some college friends, and they preferred watching it in Japanese, or it was either they preferred watching it in Japanese or we were streaming it at the time that it like was released, because that's the thing with anime, it always comes out in Japan first. So I don't know if it was like we were watching it because it had just come out and it wouldn't be in the States at a certain time. But I heard Goku's voice in Japanese for the first time, and anyone who's a fan of the show will know what I'm talking about. It is So, fun fact, T, Goku is voiced by a woman.
Oh, okay. Much like
So,
Ashes, I think.
yeah, so it's the same voice actress who voiced it because Dragon Ball has spanned like a long time. It started off when Goku's like a little boy, and so when
Right.
he's a little boy, they had a woman voice acting, for the little boy. The thing is, and I guess so. Do you know anything about Dragon Ball T? Like, have you watched it? Do you know the characters or like anything about it?
I know there's a character called Goku. That's pretty much
Okay.
about all I know.
All I'll say, it's pretty much Japanese Superman. you got
Okay.
he's an alien who came to Earth. He's got superpowers because he's an alien and he fights invading aliens that threaten the Earth. And it's more, since it's Japanese, he like knows martial arts and it's this whole thing. He has a sensei that he trained with. The Dragon Balls like summon a dragon. It's a little complex, but I feel like a lot of people would agree that it's Japanese Superman. But one thing about Goku's character is he's like a big kid. Even as an adult, he's like very playful. He like one criticism of his character is every time there's like a global threat, he's just in it for the competition of like trying to defeat the alien threat, like because he finds the fight fun.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that because he's like a big kid, they translated that in Japanese to he never grew up, so he still has a child's voice.
Okay.
But it's so weird because like if you grew up listening to the English dub, he is still a big goofball and Goku the character, but like then you hear what's supposed to be like a little kid's voice coming out of a full-grown man. It's interesting. But that's like one of those things that like the only reason I think I understand it is just because I understand his character.
Yeah.
And it's probably just as jarring. Like if a Japanese person heard like the English dub, they'd be like, "Whoa, why does he sound like an adult man?" As even though
Right.
he's an adult man. And it was funny too. Like I actually experienced this. Like I got the video game Dragon Ball Fighters. And just the default for that video game when you're doing story mode is Japanese with English subtitles. And I just played through it that way because I was so fascinated. I was like, my God, like he really does. It's a little boy voice. And it's not just him. It's like, I think his kid Gohan, it's like the same thing. It's interesting. But that's like one example of something like being weird or being translated strangely. Going back to Azumanga Daioh, that slice of life anime I watched with my sister, I think I've mentioned this to you before, maybe on the show. But so there's a joke. There's this character that they call Osaka. She's like a transfer student. She moved to Tokyo from Osaka. And the joke in the show is that like she's got an accent because she's not from Tokyo. And I guess people from Osaka have like a specific accent. So just like Dragon Ball Z, my sister and I were watching an English dub of it. And the way that they translated the joke was they gave her like a southern accent. So, howdy y'all, I'm Osaka. So, and I mean, like, interesting choice because the other thing about the character is that she's kind of dim-witted. So I don't know if that was like part of why they chose a southern accent. I don't know, but it was like another thing where it's like, oh, okay, like the joke made sense to us. I actually think that was I'm not going to say that like because she's dim-witted she should have a southern accent, but at least like I understood, oh, okay, she's like it's like the same thing as someone from Texas like going to New York or something like that.
Right. No, that was an interesting way to translate that. But yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah. No shade to you, of course, being a Southerner with an obvious Texas accent yourself.
About to throw hands. Do I have an accent? I don't know. Somebody once told me.
No.
Because there was somebody who, when I was in middle school, they moved from New York State down here. And I remember asking him, and he was like, well, you sound like a Texan. And I'm like, what does that mean? I thought I just sounded like a normal person.
Yeah, I don't know about that. No, I don't think you have an accent. Some people say I have a California accent. I remember one year in southern summer camp
You
out
do.
in. Oh, I do.
You
Okay,
sound
fine.
you sound very surfer,
Oh, oh man.
but a well.
Whoa.
You can do that way too well. See, that's what I mean. It's natural, but you know, you just you sound easy breezy, and that's
Beautiful cover girl.
maybe maybe it's California. Maybe he's born with it. I don't know.
But
No, that was
so like
Maybelline. But anyway, go on.
so I gave a few examples. Can you think of it? Because I don't know how much anime you watched growing up. I know you watched Miyazaki movies, like pretty much everybody. But like, can you think of any time there was like a show you were watching that maybe you heard it in Japanese and it was very different than what you would expect? Like I don't know if you grew up watching like Sailor Moon or something.
I I mean, like the anime that I grew up watching was always through my brother, but I've never seen them in their native language. You know, like Pokemon or like Yu-Gi-Oh. Those are the ones
Okay.
those ones I grew up watching, but I've never watched them in their native language. But I will say, I always thought the English dubs of both of those shows, everybody always sounds really intense about stuff. Like specifically Ash. I always thought Ash sound. I'm like, dude, like we're talking about having a picnic. Like, why do we sound so intense? Um,
Well, speaking of like Goku having a voice actress portraying the role in Japanese, that's kind of an interesting thing with Pokemon. Is unless I'm mistaken, I know in English he was voiced by a woman because he
yeah,
has like that 10-year-old boy voice. I'm pretty sure it's the same in Japan. I'm pretty sure he was voiced by a woman in both shows. So that's kind of an interesting thing where they did the same thing for both of them. I can think of one. It wasn't really a sub versus dub thing as much. Do you know about the Rice Ball translation by Four Kids?
wait, rice ball. I know four
Okay, so
kids.
there's a famous scene in one of the episodes of Pokemon where Brock is making donuts. And anyone who watches the show is like, those don't look like donuts. So Four Kids is they did a lot of like kid animes like Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon. For a while they did One Piece.
Hmm.
And I'll get into that too. But they would often change the translations, the localizations, whatever you want to call it, to being more like kid friendly. And also they wanted to like appeal to an American audience. So in that episode in Japanese, like Brock's making rice balls.
Hmm.
Pretty common little like lunch food, you know, it's like a ball of rice usually packed with like some fish, it's, you know, wrapped in some kombu. It's what it is. It's a rice ball. But they thought like, oh, that an American child is not going to know what that is. So let's change it to donuts.
And it
It's
doesn't look
like
anything. Probably people
it doesn't look
confuse.
like a donut, and it's also like, how is he making donuts out? Because just like in the Pokemon show, they were always camping out because they were on their little trip. They were going from town to town and whatever. So it's like, how is he making donuts out in the woods? Like he's not cooking them or anything. You need to deep fry them or whatever. It was a whole thing. It became kind of a meme, a joke, like people, you know, and because a lot of kids kind of were like that. What do you mean donuts? Those don't look like donuts. Was and they did a similar thing. So One Piece, extremely popular anime. That's another thing. I'm sure there's like I actually have heard. I have heard both the Japanese and American. And that's another one where the voices sound pretty different. I know there's some like. I think it's like Usopp sounds really different, has like a higher pitched voice in Japanese. But the Four Kids, they did, thankfully, someone else, I think it's Funimation, has taken over dubbing One Piece because they overstepped it. One Piece it looks very cutesy and like a kid's show, but it's more PG-13. You know, you do
Hmm.
have some, I mean, just the fact that like, not, is what's her face, the navigator, the map maker, she's got giant boobs, like that already is kind of like maybe not appropriate for kids. But one of my favorite characters, Sanji, is the chef,
Yeah.
and he always has a cigarette in his mouth. Which is kind of funny because that's like a whole thing. Like a lot of people in the culinary world like are smokers to like kind of cope with the stress or whatever. But in the 4Kids version, it infamously was changed to a lollipop.
That just produces smoke.
Well, I think they like got rid of the smoke too. Like it was one of those things. I saw the 4Kids version on Cartoon Network as a kid first. It was very mind blowing to find out. Oh wait, this is like actually kind of made for a slightly more mature audience, and he has a cigarette and all this other stuff. But it is like another funny example of it's like they are not looked well upon by the anime community because they kind of overstep their bounds with translating things.
Well,
because they're trying to keep it family friendly, and they're also trying to like not confuse Americans, even though I'd argue we're not that stupid. Like we're especially nowadays, like kids love Japanese stuff. I feel like rice balls would like not be confusing to a kid if they watched Pokemon nowadays.
Well, that's like the famous Sailor Moon Cousins incident.
Oh man, see, okay, why don't you explain that to the audience? I knew you knew something.
I didn't watch Sailor Moon. I found out about this later, but there was at Sailor Moon there was two characters. I don't know who they were, but they were like girlfriends, like two girls couple. And when they dubbed it for kids, I don't know if it was for the company 4Kids, but it was for children. They dubbed it for children for the US. They changed them to cousins. And people think it makes like some of them more, when I say intimate, I don't mean like sexually intimate. I mean when they're like, being close, it makes it like really awkward that they're just quote unquote cousins.
Yeah. And I grew up watching Sailor Moon because I have a sister. I would argue that Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball were like the two biggest anime, like for at least for my generation. And it was like the girl anime and the boy anime. And my sister and I watched both because we, shared a TV growing up. And I can't remember that. Like, it's one of those things when I heard about the cousin thing, I was like, oh shoot, I think I remember that vaguely. It might have been completely edited out when I was watching it, but from my understanding, because they're teen girls, that's like another thing that's kind of weird about that show is there's a lot of panty shots and stuff, but they're like supposed to be like high school girls. I don't think that it ever got to like they were having like lesbian sex. They were dating, but I think they just like kissed at one point on the show.
Yeah, and that made everyone confused.
And obviously I'm sure they cut that out if they were cousins, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to summarize everything, it's an interesting topic. It's ongoing. I don't think it's ever going to die out, but it is very fascinating to see it flipped on its head. Because usually it's all about like us American gaijin not understanding the complexities of the Japanese language, and it'll always be lost in translation unless you learn the language and watch it in the native language. So it's interesting kind of seeing it flipped on its head, because as a native English speaker, there are a lot of jokes that might go over your head if you don't speak English. Mainly just like, the accents you come across in the southern states, and so it's very personality based. I remember I wasn't really into King of the Hill as a kid, but after high school, like I watched it on Adult Swim, usually before my shift at work and stuff, and it was so much funnier than when I was a kid. And I think part of it is just it's real kinds of people that you encounter out in the world.
Right.
Which is why I think it makes sense that the Japanese people are seeing it as slice of life, because it is funny in the sense that it's like relatable to life. Like you meet people like Dale Gribble, who's like a crazy conspiracy theorist, and you meet all these people with like neuroses, or like, people like Peggy Hill, where she thinks she's like a Spanish genius, even though she's like, mispronouncing words and kind of vaguely racist on occasion. So yeah, it's just, it's fun seeing it from the other side of the fence, because now you can kind of understand a lot of the arguments against watching Japanese with a dub.
I will say though that a lot of not a lot, but I feel like dub recently has gotten a lot better. Like,
yes,
for example, I think the dub for Violet Evergarden in the series, and the movies and stuff, is amazing. That's just how I feel about it. But I
I think the
understand.
dub for the both of the films we're talking about this year are really good. We just talked about Whisper of the Heart.
Right.
Uh, I thought that was a good dub. It's Studio Ghibli, and they famously always get good voice actors. The film that we're talking about today, I think, actually had a really good dub for the
Yeah.
most part. There's one thing I'll get to once we're talking about the movie, but I think it's because of the popularity of anime. I think that there's a lot more of an effort being put into it.
Hmm.
Back in the day, it was something you did when you were a struggling actor. Fun fact: Bryan Cranston, before he was famous for things like Breaking Bad, Malcolm in the Middle, in like the '80s and early '90s, he did voice dubs for Japanese shows.
I kind of love
And it
that.
was he got paid nothing to do them, and there wasn't a lot of like serious, that's what it was back in the day. A lot of dubs were bad. Um, there's a famous one. Have you heard of? I think it's called Ghost Stories. Have you heard of this, T?
I've heard. Yeah, I've heard of ghost stories.
So in Japan, it's like a serious, like paranormal, like adventure series.
Okay.
In English, it is a comedy because it was so poorly translated that the voice actors just didn't. They were like, screw this, like we're just gonna joke around. And I guess maybe like the producers in Japan couldn't speak English or something, so like the English dub is a joke, like it's a comedy, like they're just saying things to be funny, and they're going off script, and it's got its own fan base because of that, because it's like it's like these kids like investigating ghosts and like exercising spirits and stuff, but they're like making like Scooby-Doo references, and it's silly. I've seen a couple of clips from the show. It's one of those things I probably should sit down and watch. But that's like another example of like it being so bad that like it's
Right.
kind of changed the entire genre of the show. But I would agree. I think dubbing has gotten a lot better, and I think a bit of it is because of the cultural exchange with Japan over the years. A lot of Japanese people are into things that are American, like KFC. And as everyone in the States knows, like anime is a big deal. There's huge
Oh yeah.
conventions. Some people make it their personality trait to get way too into it. And
And
they
that's when
think
we
that
that
they're
that's when we
experts.
end. That's when we get weeaboos.
Yes, exactly. But I think we've spoken enough about dubs versus subs. Let's get into the meat of the show. And what are you drinking today, T?
Okay, I found the perfect drink for this because I have this on Steelbook. I don't know if you saw the poster for this movie at all, but it involves the two main characters standing underneath cherry blossoms. So pretty. So I did a cherry blossom cocktail. It's just gin, some like it calls for vanilla cherry blossom vermouth, which I wasn't gonna make, so I just used Blanco vermouth, lemon juice, and cherry jam. And this recipe comes from the blog Craft and Cocktails, with the recipe being created by Ashley Rose Conway. It is so delicious. I've had this before. I love this, but I thought it was a perfect little drink for this.
That actually sounds quite tasty. I'm doing something a bit fruity myself. Not cherry blossoms, but I like doing sake for these episodes, or at least something Japanese. Last time I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll do a beer. Depends on what we end up reviewing. Saw this at Costco, and it's very legit sake with plum nectar. It's called
Ooh.
Nigori Ume. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing this, but I guess Nigori Ume is like the type of sake. I'm not sure. It's called Nanke no Nigoro Ume, and I guess that Nanko Ume is like it has to do with the plum, or like the region in which the plums are grown or something like that. But yeah, it's got like actual like chunks of plum nectar in it, and it looks very fruity and it smells nice. So it's gonna be a little sweeter than the stuff I was drinking last time, but I think it kind of suits this episode a little bit.
I definitely think it does. Oh my god, I forgot how big the plum flavor is in Asia, and which I discovered when I was at Disney World and went to the Japanese pavilion. But we'll pretend it was
Whoa!
authentic.
Just had my first sip. This is quite good. It's basically, man, I don't know. I was talking about how weird sake is last time. This is basically like candy, man. If you don't like the taste of sake,
You'll like this.
try whatever this is, because this is super. Like, it tastes almost like I'm drinking a smoothie or something. Woo!
Okay. You need to text me this brand and flavor so I can look check my Costco for it.
I'll shoot you a picture for sure. But what are we talking about?
So we are talking about a incredible movie. Sorry, I kind of ruined everything from the start, but A Silent Voice from 2016. I believe the literal title of the movie, if you were to directly translate it, was Shape of Voice.
Yeah. I was going to, because it's funny, in the version I was watching,
it shows both titles.
It didn't show, it showed The Shape of Voice. It's like when because I watched it on Amazon, and the title that's on Amazon is, A Silent Voice. But then, like in the actual credits of the movie, it says The Shape of Voice. So I was going to ask, like, what's up with that?
So that I think that's the literal translation of the original Japanese title. It was directed by Naoko Yamada. It was written by Riko Yoshida. Character design was by Futoshi Nishiya. The animation studio responsible for this was Kyoto Animation. Music was by Kensuke Yoshio. It's adapted from the manga A Silent Voice by Yoshitoki Oima. I could not find a budget for this. The box office, though, was $30.8 million. And we had... I'm going to go... whenever I watch the dub, which we both did in this case, I go by the dub cast, since that's basically what we're reviewing. We had Shoya, played by Ryan Shanahan. Shoko, played by Lexi Cowden, who was actually a deaf actress. Yuzuru was played by Kristen Sullivan. Tomohiro was Graham Halstead. Naoka was Kira Buckland. Miyoko was Melissa Hope. Miki was Amber Lee Connors. Satoshi was Max Middleman. And Shoya's mother was Sarah Cravens. And then Shoko's mother was either Lapisha or Lapika Shah. So that's our main players in this movie. Now, this movie did get a lot of awards. It was nominated and won a lot of awards. It won the 2016 award for Best Animated Feature Film from the Japanese Movie Critics Awards, the Japanese Academy Film Prize for Excellent Animation of the Year. It was nominated for Best Animation of the Year. I'm not sure what the difference is, but the Japanese Academy Film Prize, from my understanding, is like their Academy Awards. It was nominated for Best Animation Film by the Mainichi Film Awards, Best Anime Movie from comicbooks.com. That was nominated for that. It won second place at the New Type Anime Awards for Best Anime Movie. At the Tokyo Anime Award Festival, it won Anime Movie of the Year and Best Screenplay / Original Story. At the Japanese Media Arts Festival, it won Animation Division Excellence Award. And then it was nominated at the Annecy International Animation Film Festival for Feature Film, at the Asia Pacific Screen Awards for Best Animated Feature Film, the Sitges Film Festival for Feature Film, the Animest International Animation Film Festival nominated it for Feature Film, Camera Japan Festival nominated it for Feature Film. It did win that. Crunchyroll Anime Awards, it was nominated for Best Film and Best Animation. And Monstra Lisbon Animated Film Festival, it was nominated for Feature Film. So right out of the gate, animations all over the place. Awards all over the place. Nominated, and winning, which when you watch this movie, that's not hard to see why. Now, had you seen this film before?
No, but I remember seeing the trailer for it when it came to the States. It was like, it was released. I don't know if it got a limited release, but I saw like trailers for it online, or like, I don't know, when you're dialed into movies, especially like if a foreign animated film is getting a lot of buzz, you might hear about it. But I could have sworn, so this came out here in 2017, at least from what I saw. Like, it came out in 2016 in Japan, but then it came over here in 2017. So that's where I'm like, I wonder where I saw a trailer for it. But I do remember this because I remember thinking, ooh, that's an interesting idea for a movie. And it's like a subject, I'm not surprised it got a lot of accolades, because I don't think it's a subject that's really talked too much about in Japan. Mm-hmm. They tend to be kind of like, from my understanding, it's, people talk about ableism over here, but from what I understand over there, they are also pretty bad about like, accommodating people with disabilities. So, and that too, like, the whole bullying aspect. One thing, like, when you were listing all that stuff off, so the manga was also called A Silent Voice, or
A Silent
was
Voice.
it...
I'm assuming it was also called Shape of Voice, but again,
okay,
Englishly translated, it would have been A Silent Voice.
The other thing, because I don't understand why they changed the title, because Shape of Voice, the only thing I could think of, I genuinely think The Shape of Water came out the same year, or at least like when it was released in, I think 2017 was The Shape of Water.
Yeah, it was.
Maybe it was...
No. It was the next year.
Okay. Because I was like, why did you change the title? It's got that same kind of vibe as The Shape of Water, because the whole thing is like giving shape to something that has no shape. Mm-hmm. Which is why, like, in both cases, I think it's a good title. But you're
right. It was 2017. Like, it was 2017.
Okay, so maybe that had something to do with why it was changed. Maybe they thought there would be confusion or something. I doubt Guillermo del Toro or 20th Century Fox would like sue them over it. So maybe they would. Who knows? But yeah, that was the only thing I could think was like, is it because that movie came out? Because I didn't really get why they felt the need to change the title at all. Like, they're both good titles, but I didn't really see a reason with the other one. But yeah, it's like, accolade wise, I'm not surprised. It's tackling some pretty heavy subject matter. And also, I'm glad you clarified. My one nitpick was going to be, I wanted to know if the voice actress in English was deaf, because if she hadn't been, I don't know, that's like the one voice performance that felt off, almost like someone doing a deaf impression. So at least now I know for sure that's not the case. Maybe it was because she was trying to do like an anime girl voice or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, that's the only performance that felt off to me. But as long as they actually had someone with that disability, like, doing the character, good. Like, doesn't care. Now I don't care if it sounds off. At least I know it was like, legitimate.
Right. And I think also in Japan, I believe that the original dub also had a deaf actress. I want to say that was the case. Don't quote me on that, but I think they were also a deaf actress.
Good. That's like the one hard line I would draw with that role, is like, especially with what's going on in the film, like, you would really need someone who actually suffers from that disability, because it's like, maybe suffers is strong, you know what I mean, is afflicted. It's one of those things where it could get really insensitive if it was like someone just doing an impression of someone, because like that's the thing I know, I'm sure, is like very kind of embarrassing, is like, if you've ever like known a person who has hearing problems, they do, like, when they aren't doing sign, they will talk, but because they can't hear themselves, they kind of have an interesting sort of like voice.
Yeah, because I know there's the way voice sounds.
Exactly. So I know they're self-conscious about it, and that's kind of where it's like, okay, good, as long as you actually have a real person, because that's where it would almost get minstrel showy. Like, if I was playing a deaf person and I just start going, like, it would get gross really quickly. So that was like my one thing I just wanted clarification on. Any dub of this, I would say, like, you need someone who is hard of hearing to do the role, because otherwise it could get weird and gross.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No. Yeah. I can't. But luckily, in this case, and this was really kind of before there was really that main push to do that. So you have to give hats off to the distribution people for
Yes.
for seeking that out, for doing
No, a
that.
lot of care was put into this for sure. But so did you see this when it came out? Like you chose this. So like what I will say, good companion to my pick, because we kind of are shooting from the hip this year. We weren't sure what kind of theme we were going with. But I like that they're both slice of life, they're both coming of age. And they're both kind of like, this movie is a little bit more of a hard watch. Like,
Oh
Whisper of the
yeah.
Heart was very whimsical. Like, it's a very feel good movie. This movie has a happy ending, but for a large chunk of it, you're not feeling good. I'll bring it up as it comes, but a lot of people are going to be surprised that I'm going to be kind of comparing this to a film we covered a little while ago called Welcome to the Dollhouse.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't
I
think
could
the
see
tone.
that.
I don't think the tone is the same, but I think they're tackling the same subject matter. And they're both doing it very honestly. In Welcome to the Dollhouse, it was more for shock value because it was like a dark comedy. But in this, it's trying to be very, very true to life. Because I said that about that movie, is that bullies are not nice. And I feel like a lot of depictions of bullies in media are very toothless.
Mm-hmm.
You know, ooh, butthead, come get your hat, butthead. You know, like
Yeah.
just like stuff that probably would be annoying if you were, you know, the victim of it. But the stuff that happens in this is like pretty gut wrenching. Like, again, it might sound weird if you're familiar with both films comparing them, but the bullying that that character receives in this film is really, really hard to sit through.
Right, and and you really, what's interesting about this, but I think if I'm in Dollhouse Turner, it's just like you sit there and be like, why, like, what is so? I mean, not saying that bully's necessitated, but but it's like,
There
why?
is a reason. Like, again, going back to Welcome to the Dollhouse, that was another thing with that film that I thought was really smart. Is it's like, there is a reason people are targeted, and there's a reason people feel the need to do that to people. In Welcome to the Dollhouse, there was a couple of things. There was sort of like a love triangle going on with her bully and another bully girl who was into that guy. And clearly the guy was like actually attracted to her and stuff. And then in the family, it was just sort of a pecking order kind of thing.
Right.
So like there is reasoning behind it. And in this film, what I got, and you kind of get this because there's a whole like group of kids that are kind of coming to terms with what they did wrong when they were in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
And the main character is the big bully. He's the one that was the worst to her. And a lot of it you can kind of say it's like he wanted to fit in. Like, he wanted to be cool. And all these other kids were kind of picking on this girl. So and the thing that sort of initiated it to me, the character who made me the angriest was not actually him. It was that girl who started out helping the deaf girl out. I'm forgetting all the character names, but she's like a brunette girl.
I think it's Miyoko, because I know exactly who
I think
you're
you're
talking
right.
about.
I think so. Miyoko, she like when the girl is new, she is writing in her notebook all the time, and it just gets so overwhelming that her schoolwork starts to suffer, and so then she just kind of, ignores her after a while, and then she sort of resents her for it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
It's not
then she starts
Miyoko. It's Naoka.
Naoka. So then Naoka starts kind of being resentful of her, ruining her schoolwork, and starts kind of making fun of her, but without her being able to hear her doing it. So there's that. The other thing I found kind of interesting, and I thought maybe I was like reading too much into it until they grew up. I don't know if you got this vibe. I think Naoka actually has a crush on the main character.
I actually could see that. I really could
That's
see
the
that.
vibe I got, because, like, so once... I think they kind of liked each other, because once Naoka started kind of being annoyed with her, that's when he started really ramping up the bullying. Um,
Yeah.
and then when they were adults, or not adults, but like, you know, in high school, um, she almost seems like jealous of the attention that he's giving her. So it almost kind of feels like, oh, maybe she had a crush on him too. So there's that. There's the smart girl who is kind of a goody two shoes, and you know, people when they're older, they're saying like, oh, you made fun of her too, and she's like, oh no, I didn't. And it's like half true when you watch them as kids. She didn't bully as much as she just sort of let it happen and laughed along, you know? So it's kind of like, yeah, no,
she was a passive
like,
participant.
Exactly. And then you have the girl who tried to befriend her, and then she started getting bullied, and so she like switched schools or like left and went to a different class, and so she's kind of coming to terms with how she feels like a coward for doing that. And she was the one who was like learning sign language and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's about it. As far like, there were some other characters when they were in elementary school who they don't reconnect with when they get older, like that blonde kid who just kind of drops him as soon as he gets in trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah, like all of them have different motivations for going along with it, and it's kind of smart in that way. Again, like something I said with Welcome to the Dollhouse is like, bullying does not happen out of nowhere. Like most people do not feel like they need to be like mean to someone out of nowhere. There needs to be like a reason why. And this film was very thoughtful in that, where it's like, it's very stupid reasoning, you know, they're little kids.
Yeah.
But it makes sense, you know, it's like, oh, you know, I'm this girl's annoying, so now I'm going to make fun of her, and you know, and oh, this girl's annoyed by this other girl and I like her, so I'm going to make fun of the other girl to get attention from this girl, and you know, stuff like that.
Right. And you know, that's what's interesting is, like you said, what I meant is, like in her case, so I said there's not a reason. I mean, it's like her reason that she's that oh my god, I get their names confused because they're so similar. Shoko is being bullied is because her what is her crime? She exists. That's literally like her crime. And you know, like I said, Welcome to the Dollhouse, I kind of felt like, I don't know, I feel like not like the main character did something wrong, but I kind of felt like there was just something more going on. But I'm saying it's like
Maybe.
she literally shows up, and like that's too much for everybody in the class.
I think the similarity between the two is that it's based on traits they have no control over. You know, with Miss Wiener, or the Wiener dog from from Welcome to the Dollhouse. I mean, it's in the name that she's called at school. Like, it's because that she's perceived as ugly.
Yeah.
And so people kind of have the green light to like make fun of her. Oh, she's the Wiener dog. And it's sort of the same with Shoka, where it's like, oh, it's because of her disability, but it's also, well, it starts off, it's like she's a burden to them at first, because they're kind of friendly to her, and then once it gets like difficult to communicate with her, then they just sort of jump on it. Again, to me, I would say the ringleader is actually Naoka more than anybody else, and she started hating her just because she felt burdened by her, because at first she was the one to befriend her, and then she got sick of having to use the notebook, and she was like missing her notes in class, and all this sort of stuff. So then she just like resented her. So again, not a good reason, but I guess that's kind of the difference. Like, they're both based on like physical things about them that they have no control over. With Wiener Dog, it was because I hate that I'm calling her that, but I can't remember her first name. I just know her last name was Wiener. But anyway, with her, you know, honestly, it was like a lot more mean, because there was less, like, she wasn't bothering anybody. The one thing she was doing was apparently stealing the attention away from a boy. And that's where you got one of my favorite scenes in that movie, where it's like, I want to see you, you know. I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Anyway, but Yeah, with this one, I feel like that's kind of where it comes from more. It's like they
Her
tried
name
to
is
be
Dawn.
friends.
Just so you know, it's
Dawn, thank
Dawn.
you. Thank you.
Secondhand bullying
Yeah,
happening right here.
with Dawn, it's a lot meaner, and again, it's more for comedy purposes because she really isn't bothering anybody, but she's just being targeted by all these people. With this, it's like a ramp up, and that too, like there's a line that's crossed at one point where she is trying very hard to like get like apologize for whatever she did wrong, and instead of like forgiving her and maybe just like, we're not going to be your best friend, but we're not going to mess with you, instead, like they just keep amping it up. Like there's the bit where he gets in trouble for bullying her, like the teacher calls him out, which frankly, good on that teacher. I like that scene a lot because I'm like, no one ever does that
Yeah.
in real life. I've never had, like, even when a teacher knows a kid is getting bullied, I have never seen that happen before. So I kind of loved that scene where it's like, we all know it's you.
I know.
And then everyone
like,
just
if anybody's
gangs
bullying,
up.
speak now. And the teacher's like, okay, we're ending
Are you
this.
not going to
It's
say
you.
anything?
We all know
Yeah,
it's you.
no, that scene was great. I love also how his friends like betray him too. It kind of just shows like, it's so stupid and like no one actually, it's just interesting, right? It's that dynamic of like, oh, we're getting in trouble now. Yeah, it was him. He was the ringleader. It was him all the time. But so after that happens and he is essentially like a pariah because it's like, who bullies the deaf girl?
Yeah.
There's a bit where like
which
a bunch
which I find hilarious because they were all participating.
Yes, at least that group was. The greater class, I think, was just kind of like letting it happen. Like the main, what's the main guy's name again?
His name is
I'm having to
Shoya.
remember. So it's Kuya.
It's Shoya.
Shoya.
Shoya, and then her
That's
name
right.
is Shoko because remember we had 2 shows.
That's right. We got 2 shows, and that's another thing that annoyed him when she came. And then that one kind of nerdy kid he befriends when they're in high school calls him Yasho. Like, I guess he's being clever, like reversing it or whatever.
Yeah.
So
That's
Shoya,
Tomohiro.
yeah. So Shoya, everyone gangs up against him, and a bunch of people like write nasty stuff on his desk. And he comes back to the class to see Shoya, he's Shoya. She's what's her name again? Shoya and
Shoko.
Shoko. So Shoko is cleaning Shoya's desk, and instead of she's doing it because she feels bad for him because now he's getting bullied, and she's genuinely a nice person.
Yeah.
And instead of like thanking her, he just like assaults her. Like he just shoves her.
And by the way, we mean physical
and then that kind of
assault.
and then that kind of makes her crack, and then she jumps on top of him, and it becomes sort of this "why are you so mean to me" kind of thing. But there you go. It's like there's this point where it should have ended, even before like he's called out by the teacher and stuff. Like there's a point where it's like, okay, we don't like each other. We should just kind of move past this. But it just keeps escalating. And that's where we get to the point where she ends up leaving and moving schools.
Right.
And then that is the point at which he is like officially just like a social pariah at his school. And that is kind of the cutoff point for elementary school to high school. Because then we jump forward. Well, technically we start.
We go back.
We start and we go back. And normally that's something...
We start with Shoyo's attempted suicide.
How dare you say those words?
Oh
on
my
the
god, I'm
platform.
sorry. Hey,
You should
I'm
have
sorry,
said
excuse me.
sewer slide. Excuse me,
okay.
unalive.
Okay, actually, let me redo that. So we go back.
I'm kidding. You don't need to redo anything. I am joking because I don't think we're gonna get dinged, and also the overuse of just like self-censorship is so funny these days. No one says anything anymore. But no, we do start with him trying to end his own life because of the guilt that he feels, for what he did. And we don't know what he did. at the very beginning. You know, it's like he's writing a letter, and that's kind of an interesting thing too. I almost forgot. So one kind of commonality both of these films have. We were talking about Country Road a lot in the last one. It's not super prominent in this film outside of the main credits, but you got that opening credits song talking about my generation.
Yes, I actually read that he was the director, I believe, was like a fan of this band, and wanted to use like their music in this.
Yeah, so that was going to be another question because I was like, well, we know for sure Country Road was intended for Whisper of the Heart, and it's got that cool, you know, you get to hear it in Japanese during the end credits and stuff. So I was going to ask, like, was that just for the English dub or was that in the regular movie? So it sounds like it was in both versions.
So from my understanding, it was in both versions, and that no, it would that he was a fan. The director was a fan of the Who and wanted to use this in the film.
Cool stuff. So, you know, again, not prominently using all of the Who's music or anything like that, but there is kind of an interesting through line with both of these films in that way too. But yeah, so then after we hear his little, you know, note and he's about to jump off a bridge, then we go back and we see everything we were just talking about. Then we catch up to him. He doesn't go through with it, but he kind of goes on this redemption arc where he wants to make up for the things that he did wrong. It starts off with him you know, giving his bike to someone bullying this nerdy kid in his class.
Who is soon to be BFFs with him. His name is Tomohiro.
Tomohiro. And Tomohiro is sort of the first domino to fall as far as, you know, him becoming a better person. Because, you know, he's also kind of fixated on he wants to reconnect with Shoko.
Yeah,
Shoko,
he is.
right? Shoko. He wants to reconnect with Shoko and just apologize. And I think he finds her first. But the thing that's kind of neat is, like, he is rewarded for his good deed because his bike is stolen. But Tomohiro?
Yeah, Tomohiro.
Tomohiro. Man, these names. Tomohiro finds his bike and returns it to him, and then kind of becomes his BFF, his ride or die. No matter what Shoya does, he is always there to you know, defend him, and so to the point of it being kind of funny. Like, I love it when he's like ready to fight people. It's like, oh, don't talk to him that way.
Don't talk about my man that way.
Don't talk about my man that way. No. But yeah, so then the rest of the film is pretty much just he does kind of, at first it doesn't work out with him reconnecting with Shoko, and he starts kind of seeing all of these people that he knew from elementary school that he's not seen since then. And another thing that the film does, so he's like isolated himself. Like, it's been so long that a lot of people don't really care about what happened in elementary school, and also a lot of people have moved schools, different classes, all that sort of stuff. But he has just sectioned himself off from the rest of the class, and he has like these X's over everyone's face.
Yes,
and that's kind of a neat.
I love that trait.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's kind of nice to see, and you sort of predict it's probably going to happen with the kind of movie it's setting itself up to be, where over time more of those X's are removed and he can see people's faces, and by the end of the film it's like nobody has an X on their face really. So that's pretty much like what the movie is about. But I've been doing a lot of yapping. What do you think, T? Why, like, this film moved you? How did you hear about it? Did you see it when it was in theaters? And yeah,
I literally was looking for something to bring that we hadn't done, because we do a lot of Miyazaki movies, and I wanted to kind of step outside of that. And so I found out about this one because I was like, movies that are like, and I think I put in Violet Evergarden because I really, really like Violet Evergarden, or like something. And I came across this one and I watched it and I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. We need to do this. And I will say I sobbed several times during this movie. I don't know if you cry during movies. I cry during movies, and I cried several times during this movie. Uh, just the emotionality and the characters and the way that, like you said, it's so real with what's happening to these people. And I love that Shoya's journey in this film really has to do with him trying to make up for what he did. And then in doing so, it kind of forces everybody else to take account of what they did and their part in everything. And I love though that her there's a scene where he saves Shoko from doing what he was going to do at the beginning of the movie. And that causes Shoko to come to terms with her own guilt that she felt, because she always felt like she was a burden. And so there's just guilt. There's guilt all throughout this movie. There's so much emotion in this movie. And I don't know, it just really, really touched me. And I wanted to share this movie because I was just kind of just blown away by it.
Gotcha. So before you decided on this, had you seen it, or were you watching it the first time at the same time I was watching it for the first time?
I saw it sometime around my Violet Evergarden phase. And
okay.
I'm still in my Violet Evergarden phase, but like I said, I was trying to find more anime sort of like it, and I found, and this one was recommended. And
how many years ago was that? Was that like...
That was probably like maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
I hadn't watched it since, but when I was trying to decide what movie to do this time, I picked it up as a sign that it was, the Steelbook was at Barnes & Noble for 20% off. And I was like, you know what? This is what we're doing.
God bless Barnes & Noble. They always have lots of good stuff. Wish I had one nearer to me where I'm living now. But, yeah. The ending was shocking for the most part. So, like, most of the movie is just kind of, them going... It's his redemption arc. He's reconnecting with people. The old friend group is coming together. There's kind of some arguments over how people were in the past and things like that. And it sort of culminates... Another thing that irritated me... and I'm already forgetting her name. The brunette bitch. That was like the meanest one to Shoko.
Naoka.
Naoka is still a bitch. And they just... I feel like maybe you have experienced this too. I've had friend groups in school, like grade school, where there was like one kid everyone didn't like, but they just never told them to stop like hanging out with them. You know what I mean? I don't know if you had that.
They were just slowly just removed from group chats, and
it drove me crazy that they kept having Naoka hang out with them.
I hate her, but she is an incredibly interesting character.
Yeah, I mean, it just drove me crazy because it's like she was like openly being mean to Shoko in front of all of them, and it's like, why do you keep inviting her to like hang with you guys? But yeah, character wise, she is interesting. Again, speaking of which, so the ending is the shocking part. It all culminates. The friend group has kind of reconnected. It's like some kind of festival. I forget if it's like New Year or whatever. But they're all having a pretty good time. But Shoko decides to leave early. And, she goes home. And Shoya follows her, because she's acting odd. And she attempts to take her life the same way that he was taking his at the beginning of the movie, by jumping off, in this case, her apartment balcony. The thing that shocked me was, because I just assumed he was going to save her and that was going to be it. So the fact he saves her but then falls off the balcony, I was just like, oh my God, did he die? And then you find out he's in the hospital and stuff. The thing that gets really kind of mucky and interesting about the ending is the role reversal. Because now she is being blamed for him getting hurt. Despite the fact that, he, she was at that point arguably because of what he did when they were kids.
Well, because
But it's like interesting, right? Because her mom like hated him, and now she's like begging for forgiveness from his mom. The thing with Naoka, I said I think she has a crush on him. That was like solidified in the ending, where she is constantly going to see him at the hospital every day, and she's like standing by his side and all this stuff. Like,
I think she, but okay, so this is the New Year's. But like right before that happens, there's that big scene where Shoya kind of loses it, and he's like, "Look, everybody's responsible because Naoka showed up to one of their gatherings, does what she does,
yes,
blows everything up, and and Shoya has this whole breakdown about everybody's responsible. You can't just blame me for like he's basically standing up for himself." For like the first time ever,
yeah.
he's like, "You guys cannot just put all this guilt on me. We were all responsible," and everybody gets all defensive, and the group kind of like breaks up temporarily.
Yep, the exes go back over the face briefly.
Right, and then that's when later, I don't know if it's later that night or a few days later. That's when he goes to the thing with Shoko, and Shoko saw what happened, and she's thinking, "This is all because of me. Once again, I'm the burden. I ruined everybody's life, whatever." That's when she decides to take her own life. And then he's there because what's her face? Her sister, I think it's Yuzuru was her name. She decided that she needed something from the house. So he goes in and he like catches her like just in the nick of time, grabs her. He's able to like save her, but he goes over. And then I don't think the only person that blames her really is herself and what's his face, and of course the girl we don't like, Naoka.
But again, also her mother is very like because she hated him for what he did when they were kids. Like there's a scene early in the film where she slaps him for even like talking to her daughter again.
Yeah,
but there's like that bit while he's still recovering at the hospital, where she like gets on her knees and is like begging for forgiveness from his mother, which again is kind of an interesting role reversal, because it's like,
because earlier
most of the movie,
yeah,
he was like asking for her forgiveness, and now it's kind of it's like, oh, it's right. I'm so grateful that my daughter's life is saved because of your son,
And what's interesting,
I'm sorry for how much I didn't forgive him at the time.
Yeah, and then what's interesting about this thing is, this whole time, Shoko was, as far as she was always handicapped as far as being able to communicate, and she basically learns through sort of Shoya's gift, which is him saving her, that you can't suffer in silence. You need to talk. And so that's why she literally goes and starts telling people, "This is why this happened. I was feeling this way." And everybody's like, "Oh my God, I didn't know that." It's basically like she learned she does not have to suffer in silence, especially now that she's found people who care about her. Like I remember specifically the scene with Mickey, where she goes and she talks to Mickey, and I think it's Satoshi's there too. And she's just like, "Oh my God, you were feeling like that's horrible. You're not a bird, whatever." And so I really do think that that's interesting, that not only is it, she literally learned, she literally is not communicating with people. She learned what lack of communication does. It's I'm not explaining it well, but it's really, really interesting that I love that. And then she goes and she talks to everybody, and she's able to kind of rally everybody also, like you said, around seeing now I'm doing it, Shoya. And the only person that she can't get on the side with is Naoka, but she does sort of get Naoka on her path to recovery, because at the end of the movie, she's still bitchy at the end of the movie, but when she signs Moron to Shoko, it's supposed to be an indication, kind of like that she's learned she took the effort to learn some sort of way to communicate with her, and that's kind of supposed to
Yeah,
be.
it's like kind of become like a frenemy, like endearing sort of thing where it's like, oh, I'm going to call you a moron, but it's all in jest, you know, and Shoko like laughs about it too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, would you say that Shoko finds the shape of voice?
Oh my god. The shape of voice in this case
I
is the
quit.
shape of friendship.
Right.
But I
Yeah,
there's
it's
go
it's a
ahead.
cute ending. It's a cute ending. It's again for most of the movie, it's just like a very rough watch. Partly because of the way that they bullied her, partly because of just the uncomfortability of having to take accountability for your actions. You know, it's a very very cathartic kind of movie where it's like very uncomfortable, but the ending is very very sweet.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of like the formation of this new friend group as well, because like you could make an argument that a lot of them were kind of isolated, besides Shoya, because you know, and maybe it's because you don't really see who they're hanging out with in their own time, but it's like, you know, Naoka, she's very excited to see Shoya when they, you know, cross paths, and she kind of wanted him to reconnect with the blonde guy who was still a jerk.
Yeah, she was
um,
because her big thing is she wants things to go back to the way they were.
yeah,
And you said her
but
big
this
thing
it
is
begs the
resentment.
question. Yeah, it begs the question though, like who were these people hanging out with? Like, Tanoshi. Oh my god, the names. BFF
Tomohiro.
nerdy guy. Tomohiro.
Yeah.
Tomohiro. So Tomohiro, it's obvious like he just didn't have friends.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a big thing with him. It's like, oh, now I have this friend group. Goody Two Shoes girl. You don't you, like. It's weird. You always saw people wanting to talk to her in class, but I never knew what friend group she was hanging out with. And then the girl who knows sign language, who switched schools. I don't know. Like, it's interesting, right? Because it's like the formation of a friend group, and it kind of implies to me that a lot of them were isolated. Even Shoko, you know, she hung out with her little sister. Like, at first you think, which I thought that was hilarious, where it's like, oh, I'm her boyfriend, or whatever.
Right.
And you think like,
I at
oh,
first
she's like
thought-
dating like a fifth grader or something. And
I at first
but-
thought that her sister was trans, and then they were like, no,
Yeah.
she's just androgynous.
Yeah. Well, and that's like a whole thing too. In Asian countries, it's like really common for little girls to have super short haircuts.
Yeah.
So like a lot of them just like look like little boys. So I don't know if that's what that's about or something, but just the fact that she only really hangs out with her sister kind of goes to show she didn't really like make any friends growing up either. So, you know, this is all just sort of speculation on my part, but it also just sort of felt like there was almost an isolation with all of these characters. Like none of them had a friend group until they kind of connected with each other. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading too much into it, but
No,
that's kind of how the ending felt.
No, I think you're right. I think it showcases there's actual, you know, physical isolation, where which I do feel like Yuzuru was physically isolated because so much of her time was spent taking care of her sister. There was social isolation, which you saw with Shoya. There was isolation in a crowd, which you saw with Miki. And then we have, like I said, we had Tomohiro. He had no friends, so he was kind of isolated. Like I said, it's really kind of just giving a voice to these different types of things and people finding each other, and it's just, I don't know, it's just the whole process is super it's super pretty and it's super beautiful in this context.
The other thing I want to touch on is, as sad as it is on top of Shoko wanting to be loved, you know, there is sort of that admission near the end of the film that she hates herself. You know, and it's all just because of her disability and her inability to connect with people despite her efforts. And it's one of the most heartbreaking parts of the movie is hearing her say that. but it is sort of Shoya's redemption comes from real empathy because he also hates himself for what he
Yeah.
did. It's not just symbolic, the fact that they both end up trying to take their own lives, but it's pretty much kind of the same thing. They feel like they are not just incapable of being loved, but they don't deserve it.
Yeah.
And that's what's really heart-wrenching about kind of the emotionality of this story is just, he did something that was bad. He unlike her, she was hated just because she was like a burden to people, or at least she felt that way. Some, Naoka thought that, but Naoka's a bitch.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too. Like I talk about the isolation of these people. The only people who really have kind of that raw emotional outburst of like saying that they hate themselves are Shoko and Shoya. But there is an element of that with the other characters too. Maybe not hating themselves, but maybe disliking themselves. Like obviously, there's the girl who knows how to sign, and her whole thing is like she's ashamed of being a coward, in her own words.
Yeah.
And then Tomohiro, I said that right? Tomohiro?
Yeah.
He never says he hates himself or he's ashamed of himself, but I'm sure there is sort of a frustration with not being able to find friends easily.
Yeah.
He is drawn in such a way that like he's kind of short and he's kind of pudgy. So maybe there's a little bit of a body image thing with him as well.
Okay. Really quick, I thought he looked like Steven Universe.
Same. That's funny. I didn't think of that until you said that, but yeah, he definitely did. With the Goody Two Shoes girl, I don't. She's kind of she's a tough character to talk about because she doesn't have that much of a character. And then Naoka, like you said, she's an interesting character too. And I sometimes wonder if there is kind of a self-image issue with her. Maybe not self-hatred, but like again, she's. It's weird why she decides to target Shoko so much, and it's like,
well, at first it was because he said, but then she resents him for ruining the friend group that she had. So now she's isolated because the friend group kind of fell apart.
Yeah, but that's kind of where again it's hard to talk for all of the characters because we only kind of touch lightly on some of them. But I do think that like raw admission of like bad self-image, whether it's like hating yourself or whether it's just, wishing you were different. I think that kind of carries through to all of the members of the friend group in different ways. Again, like it's interesting. It's definitely a story about the two shows, Shoko and Shoya, but the themes of their, coming together and forgiving each other for different things is like kind of passed through the rest of the friend group in a sort of way. Like again, to me, like the ending is like this new friend group being formed, as imperfect as it is. But again, I feel like they are almost kind of emblematic of the other characters and their own shortcomings, whatever they are. Like the film focuses on the two main characters as it should, but I do think that's why it kind of feels almost I said emblematic already, but you know what I mean. Like it represents
symbolic?
A bigger picture of things.
You can say symbolic if you want to change up your words.
Symbolic. What's my word count?
Reaching the end of your word count.
I really need to pass this class. It's very smartly written. It's not flashy with the animation. It doesn't have like.
I would say that it has some
I
very
even
pretty
said
scenes.
Yes, no. Like I just mean this isn't like. What's a good example? Like it's not the flying sequence from Whisper of the Heart. There's no
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's no like crazy. This isn't Princess Mononoke. Like, there's nothing fantastical happening. It's all very mundane stuff. So although the animation is crisp and very pretty, it's not going to like blow your mind outside of like just the scenes being very pretty. You know, like there's like a lot of cool settings and things like that. But yeah, it's like visually, it's not going to blow you away. Subs versus dubs. I might actually, this would be one that would be kind of interesting to listen to in Japanese. Glad they got a voice actress who has the same impairment as Shoko.
Yeah.
But like I felt I'm so relieved because no offense to her performance, it almost sounded like someone maybe faking being deaf and like doing the noises. So glad that's not the case. But yeah, like overall, it's a great film. Every year there's like movies that I don't get around to seeing because it's already happening this year. For our finale, I'm sure there's going to be some stuff that I don't see. Like right now, I'm pretty sure Final Destination I'm not going to get to. This was one of those movies in 2017. I saw the trailer. I thought it looked really good. It was getting good reviews. But, you know, maybe it was a limited release. Maybe it was because, you know,
I looked it up. It was a limited release in the US.
There you go. So I probably had 2 weeks to see it and then it was gone. And then I forgot about it because you know, lots of anime movies come out nowadays too. But very happy, got around to seeing it, and I'm glad that it's been showered in accolades. As for me, I'm going to give it 3.5 shots of whiskey out of 4 because it's really good. I think it's some good soul food, even if it might not sound like your cup of tea. Definitely think it would be worth checking out just to kind of see something interesting. Again, with anime, people always have these ideas of like it's all flashy and crazy and exaggerated, but there is some more mundane stuff, kind of like how King of the Hill is popular in Japan for being a slice of life of America.
Yeah.
Like this is something that's relatable to most people, even if you haven't been brutally bullied to the point of, you know, wanting to jump off a bridge.
Right.
You know, it's very viscerally, universally a human experience, and I think it's written very well.
Yes. Well, it's written very well, and I did read that some people say that, you know, there's certain stuff that we miss out on that we would hear in the manga. One of them being Naoka's character is more expanded upon, and there's more nuance that we miss out on. But I'm going to go ahead and give this a 3.5 out of 4 pitchers of sweet tea. My main reason, I really, really like this movie. You know, I think the acting's stellar. I think the writing's really good, and I think that it's a very powerful movie. It has a lot to say about isolation, about bullying, about, you know, reinvention, about guilt and empathy, and all these just different things rolled together. But the reason why I'm not giving it the 4 full stars is I do feel like at the very beginning, I was a little confused with their editing choices. I did have to like look it up online and see like what's going on. What's the deal? What's happening here? Because I feel like there was some editing choices that they made that had me confused to what was going on. Was this past? Was this present? Where are we at?
That's a good point, because I gave it a 3.5 as well, so I didn't quite explain my... don't want people to get the idea it's like, oh, it's because it wasn't flashy. No, I do think, because it's over 2 hours long, not by much, I think it's like 2 hours and 7 minutes or something like that, but I do think it could have been cut down with some fat, like that scene that you pointed out. And I almost touched on it way earlier in the episode, but the way, like, starting it off in the middle and then going back, it's one of those things that's been overdone with a lot of screenplays and movies and stuff, and it was made fun of on Rick and Morty, like, if it's done that many times. There's another movie that I actually really liked from this year that I will be touching on this like during our finale when we're reviewing all the movies. It's one of those things where you really got to ask yourself, is it necessary to jump back? Or, you know, because if it had just started off with, you know, the kids, you know, and you didn't know that there was going to be something. So I feel like it might have been more of an emotional gut punch because you just be like, oh, it's a cute little movie with kids in elementary school, and oh no, the deaf girl has come to class, and like I don't think you would suspect that it was going to get as heavy as it was, and I don't know if it's like that in the manga or whatever, but I know what you're saying, because like I almost kind of feel like if they had just gone chronologically, it would have been a better movie. Right. And also, there would have been some fat trimmed out, because you wouldn't be like going over scenes that we've seen already. So that also would have cut down the runtime. I think if this was like an hour and 50 minutes and they really like streamlined some of those choices, I agree with you. I think there was some confusing editing things. I think it would have been a little bit better. But it's, you know, it's one of those things where it's a phenomenal film. It's just like kind of nitpick stuff, which is why it's only, you know, half a point away from being perfect. But I know what you mean. Like I think that's pretty much the same reason I'm also giving it a 3.5.
We do agree though that it's a bomb movie though.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, who wouldn't agree?
You heard it here. Whiskey said it's awful. Jump on him. No, I'm just kidding. No, but you know, it's a good movie, like you said. Just some fat here. Like I said, the point that it's like nitpicky and we kind of have to find some stuff tells you just how good it is. But it's good, and then, you know, some of the stuff is not its fault. It's being adapted from a manga that was, I don't know how many, you know, volumes it was. And that's also a lot to put into a movie. And again, I haven't read the manga, but to do it and then have the movie still be well received is pretty impressive.
I agree. But what do you guys think? If you're listening to this on YouTube Music, you can tell us directly in the comments. We are on X, I guess. We never post much anymore, but we do both have our own Letterboxd
party.
I still need to review a bunch of stuff, but you can hit me up there. I'm still kind of learning the ropes as far as like if you can message people or what the deal is with that, but that's probably going to be your best bet for getting in touch with us, and we'll always be receptive if anyone has requests for reviews. But until next time, I have been Whiskey.
I've been Sweet Tea.
Keeping it Kino.
And suck it, Scorsese.
Sayonara, guys. Talk to you next time.
Wait. Before we go, I do want to put in our obligatory thing. Not obligatory. This is something that we do like to say, especially when we talk about movies with this topic.
Oh, yes.
If you are struggling, there is help out there. We will put a helpline in the description below, but you're not alone in this. Many of us have been there, and you're worth having in the world. But until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Reels on the Rocks is a production of La Prince Laboratories. It is edited and produced by Alejandro Castillo and programmed by Jamie King. Original music is provided by Pat Mars, and original artwork by Ace Esparza.